Hello there, and welcome to the Pint-Sized Healing Podcast. My name is Max Thompson. Let's get started. Hey guys, this is the first time that I actually have a special guest with me on the podcast. Christine Judd is joining me, and she's a holistic business manager, an author, a yoga teacher, and a Lomi Lomi practitioner. Her journey through depression has led her to explore various different treatment approaches, from the medical to the woo-woo, and she's launching a podcast later this year called Living Through the Hard Stuff, in which she will explore depression through the eyes of different holistic traditions, and she'll be sharing her tips and tricks on how she manages to ride the waves of depression through her daily activities, her spiritual practices, and other techniques. And welcome, Christine, because I just blew that bio in there. Today, you're joining me as well to talk about self-care, which is where we're focusing our attention this month, and to talk about that from your background and your experiences.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here and talk about this because it's so important, and I really do believe that it's one of the most important things we can do for ourselves. So,
yeah, as we were saying before we started recording the podcast as well, without that sort of level of self-care, it becomes really hard to actually do a lot of healing if you don't consider your own needs in all the various ways that they come up, from the physical to the spiritual to the emotional.
absolutely, yeah, totally. Like, I mean, if you don't look after yourself, and I know there's days when it's really hard to do, but those are the days when it's really important. But it might look different to days when you're feeling better.
Yeah, I think as well, because we think of self-care and so often as, just, I don't know, bubble baths and, I don't know, maybe ice cream, ice cream in front of Netflix or something. But, there's so many aspects to it, and there's so many really small ways in which you can actually make the day a little bit better, even when it started off as quite a grim day, or maybe you've been quite triggered, or those kind of things. You can do really small things sometimes just to push you over that little
little hurdle to kind of get better.
Hurdle.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
the word. Thanks.
Yeah. For sure. Like, I mean, for me, a bubble bath for me is always helping, I have to say. And I've started actually making that a little ritual on a weekly basis, to make sure I get my time in a dark bathroom with only candles and a book. But, if it's on a day-to-day basis, if I'm having a bad day, now thankfully I do have my dog who kind of forces me out, actually. So whereas I know it's hard, but the walk with him in the morning, or even just having to let him outside the back door and making a cup of tea has really kind of saved me, and through a lot of times when I really wasn't well and I really couldn't really do anything, but because he was there and I had to do it, it kind of did give me a little bit of a hurdle, and get me over that hurdle of like getting up, because that's usually the most difficult thing. I find to kind of once you are up, it's a little bit easier, but kind of that initial act of getting up, I found that when you're in the depth of it, it's just the most difficult thing to do.
I think pets in general actually are good for that. I mean, I don't have a dog, but I do have a cat, and I still have to get up because she needs food, and sometimes it's then easier to have to care for someone else.
Yeah, for sure. But also then I found that if I manage to get up and get a cup of tea, and just sit, right, without having the expectation. And I think that's the problem that we have, or I have anyway, that suffering from depression, is we have so much expectation on ourselves that we need to function. And, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? I should be able to do this or that. And I've been really trying to practice kind of, I suppose, loving kindness, but also kind of just recognizing was like, hey, I got up this morning, I made a tea, and I managed to take a shower. That's like a good day. That's a win, you know? So for me, yeah. And also what I found is actually music. On really bad days, if I start putting on music, even while I'm still lying in bed, and there are a lot of days, or there, during difficult times, that I don't get up until, I don't know, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because I just can't. But I found that if I start putting on music, it does trigger something in me. It triggers my senses.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone for me is self-care, to kind of like, okay, well, it's fine. I'm lying in bed here, but that's okay. And I'm just listening to music, and, that kind of, I found, because it accesses a different area of your brain that's not affected by the brain fog, by the, depression, that it does take you out of things.
Yeah, it kind of gets you out of that little bubble of feeling bad, doesn't it?
For sure, yeah.
It kind of breaks through that wall a little bit, and that's really what you need to do. And like you say as well, like, I know that this is true for survivors as well. We say this so often, like, I should be doing better, I should have healed more, or and we beat ourselves up even for things like not being physically well, having the flu and not having been able to finish our to-do list. And we sit there and we say, oh, I've been so bad, or it's been such a bad week. And I'm like, well, you fought off the flu, so that's a win. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much. I think we forget the little wins sometimes.
For sure. And I've been, and I've made a point. So I started actually an Instagram account where I find something beautiful or something that I'm grateful for every day. Now, I don't always manage it every day, but I try to kind of do it as much as I can. And there was a time when I really did it every day. And it really does help to kind of shift our mind a little bit, and kind of look at, well, what am I grateful for today? And some days it's, well, I got up and took a shower, and I think it's rewiring our brain slightly to kind of, because when we're in these situations, we can't function like air quotes kind of normal people, right?
Yeah.
And we forget that depression is an illness. It's not something I choose. It's not something that I, wanted, but it is there, right? So, I think it's really important to kind of recognize that, and kind of recognize the little things, and notice. And even purely by doing that, I found that even in itself is self-care, right? Because you're like, well, I'm starting to like notice, like, oh wow, there's like beautiful sunshine just coming through my window right now.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and it just, I do the same in terms of journaling. Like, every night I just write like maybe 3 or 4 lines, just really quickly, the good things that happened that day. Because if you're only going to write 2 lines about a day, you don't want to remember the stupid things that happened. So you automatically kind of write about, oh, this really cool thing happened. And sometimes it's like, actually yesterday was a really stupid day for me. But then it ended with me meeting up with some friends on Skype, and that was amazing because I hadn't spoken to them for a while. So then that becomes what you write down as that happened that day, and all the stupid stuff with all the admin and the house that wasn't as clean as I would have wanted it to be, and all that kind of, the daily drag.
The daily grind.
It doesn't really come into that so much, and so you focus on, oh, but I had a really nice time talking to my friends on Skype, and it just kind of changes the way you think about the day. And also, thinking about it is just, or doing the Skype call is obviously self-care, connecting with your friends, but so is thinking about it and just kind of being aware that that was a good thing, that helped, that made you feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was saying earlier to you, I've had a massive kind of busy kind of 2 weeks, and I've let my self-care slip because everything else was more important. Everyone else was more important, which is also very much of a, I suppose, symptom of the illness to some extent, because we're, we don't want to be a burden to anyone else. So we do it all, and, we're trying to do it all. But, so, that now I'm kind of like, okay, well, it's time to kind of take a step back again and like look after myself, and, just, even play 5 minutes with my dog, or, I've actually, one thing I did today for myself for self-care is I put an incense on that I bought in Bali last year. So that kind of brought me right back to, the beautiful place and the beautiful kind of thing. And that just lightened up my day,
It's nice to have kind of that, like good memories ready waiting for you. There's
Yeah.
I did a post at some point about doing I'll make sure there's a link in the description of the podcast. I did a post to our website at some point of doing a positivity portfolio, and it's just the act of, maybe finding a shoebox or something and filling it with things that have good memories attached to them, so that when you're having a really bad day, you can grab the shoebox and just go through it and be reminded of the nice things that, you've a postcard from someone, or, I mean, those kind of good memories.
I love that idea. That's
and
amazing.
to just have a little box of positivity sitting there just in case you need it. And obviously, I mean, the process itself is a lot of fun as well, but it's such a nice little, all right, there is good things
Yeah. Although
happening.
the whole positivity kind of thing I find quite difficult, because, for me, actually recognizing that, okay, today is a crap day is a good thing, right? And I don't,
Oh,
we're not
absolutely.
always positive, yeah,
Oh,
right? But
no. I mean,
there's a whole, I think there's a whole kind of movement of like, positive thinking and just think positive, and, and it makes me really mad, because it was like,
all the if you're using positivity as a way to repress all the more complicated stuff, because I don't like even calling it the negative stuff, it's just harder.
yeah,
It's not about, you have to feel all these things as well. So no, it definitely positive thinking when it comes in the form of trying to repress everything else is, to be honest, just going to bite you in the bum later on, because that dark stuff's still there and it's going to come up at some point if you don't
but
deal with it.
yeah, and that's actually partly the reason why I want to bring the stuff out that I am going to bring out later in the year,
Mm-hmm.
because, social media kind of like only shows ever the good stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's never the struggles that people have. It's never the bad days that people have. It's always just, oh, look at me here, I'm happy. And, so that I find can really get to me. And I know to other people as well, it's like, well, everyone's life is perfect and mine is crap. Well,
Well, and
actually, it's
I
not.
exactly, and I think as well, this is something that I had a discussion with our very own Carrie about this. So I can't even remember what had happened to her. I think it had something to do with mowing the lawn, I think, but something completely mundane anyway. And she was having a freak out about it because something had gone wrong, and she was just like, "Oh, I'm so stupid for not being able to deal with this," and she brought it into that kind of, I'm always going to be a survivor and I can't deal with things, right? And I says, but this is just something that happens to people, right? That's just, sometimes something goes wrong. I had the same when we moved into our current house. On the first day, we locked ourselves out by leaving the key on the inside of the door, right? Which is silly, but it's just one of those things that happen. And even just the act of realizing that that could happen to anyone, that has nothing to do with, who you are, or whether you have PTSD or whatever. It just happens. That's just what happens in life sometimes. And just realizing that sometimes is the act of self-care.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, yes, like just talking about yesterday, actually, I left the house and left my like front door wide open for hours of the day because I was just so ditzy, and I just,
That
it
is
was
the exact
so,
opposite of what I did.
well, yeah, I was totally out of it. And, my husband called me later. I was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, the door is open." So, but I was kind of like, "Oh, well, that's just, I actually didn't beat myself up over it. Now that you're saying that, I was like, ah, yeah, sure. I was just ditzy. Like, it's just,
It happens.
full moon. It was like super full moon yesterday. So I was like,
Yes.
I'll just, it was the moon. It was me being ditzy. So,
And that's the thing, like, and everybody, regardless of who they are, what their background is, what their story is going to sometimes do something silly or forget that their food was in the oven, or whatever it is that we've screwed up for that day, because that's just how life works, and
yeah,
that's
but I
totally
think,
fine.
yeah, but I think when you're, it's a process of learning that that's the case. Because
Yes,
if you're in that kind of mindset of and space of like everything's hard and everything is my, because for me depression has like a sense of like everything is my fault, everything, like I'm such a burden to everyone else, I'm such a, nuisance, why can I not do these things that other people can do,
absolutely.
and kind of talking about self-care, getting that awareness again is a massive step, and it takes
Yes,
time, right? And it takes loving kindness to yourself and kind of little baby steps to kind of get there, so if I say anything to your listeners, I'd be like, be kind to yourself. And you know it is hard, and you're going to trip up, but every day little bits and pieces, and it's gonna get better.
definitely. And I think as well, like, sometimes the win is um, you know, reaching out to other people who know the feeling, or just other people. Um, because, we get sometimes people who are in our Facebook group and are just kind of venting or ranting about, the things that they're struggling with. Just doing that is a big win,
Oh
because you're
yeah.
reaching out. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything that can get you out of the bubble of feeling bad, everything that kind of pokes through that wall is great, is a win, is self-care.
Yeah, and I think, having a group like that around you and like the support there, and kind of, and it doesn't necessarily mean then as well that you need a response, right? It's just a pure act of like, well, now it's out, right?
Exactly.
It's out there. It's no longer in me. It's no longer eating me up. It's out there, and it doesn't necessarily mean need a response from anyone, but it's literally just the act of, yeah, just getting it out there.
Yeah, I once did uh, onboarding training when I worked for a big multinational, and the trainer said at some point, like, when you think of your mood as a little balloon, and someone says something nasty to you, he says it only takes a little prick to burst your bubble, right? And but but the same is kind of true for if you're in that kind of negative headspace, which also I often feel like is kind of a bubble that you're in, right? You're kind of disconnected from everything and everyone. Just a little prick can burst that bubble.
I love that, actually. That's a really good analogy. Like, it's, and it's a little thing that kind of bubbles it over as well. It's like the little thing of like, yeah, like locking yourself in that could spiral you over, right?
Exactly.
Um, but I think kind of the more you start looking after yourself, and it's not selfish to do, by the way, which we always think that it is, but it's not. It's a necessity, and you can't be your best self for anyone else around you, if you're not your best self for yourself.
Well, it's the same reason as why they tell you in the plane to put on your own oxygen mask first. You can't help
Correct.
anyone while you're suffocating, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's maybe a little bit gruesome, but yeah, that's the reasoning.
Sad, but
So,
yeah. So it's, and I mean, self-care is talked about a lot in, like you said, it's, often kind of associated with bubble bath or getting a massage or, going to the spa or something. But it really is the little things, like, and for me, that's, you know, a good cup of tea, smell, you know, putting an incense on, putting a good song on, and just throwing a ball for my dog. It's just, you know, at the moment, all that I need.
And it's honestly, I think pets are some of the best self-care
Oh my
that's
God. I mean,
available. I mean, and they are so good at it as well. I mean, or at least I don't know, but my cat seems very good at self-care.
yeah, you see, I actually, so my dog is a rescue, and he, you know, has come from a very, very bad background.
Yeah,
And purely me having to show up for him
exactly.
made a huge difference. And then seeing that unconditional love eventually coming back from him, it's just
It's
amazing.
amazing. Yeah, we've rescued ours as well. And it's funny because we've had it for about a year and a half now, and I had a really bad PTSD episode, like literally sobbing in the middle of a restaurant type PTSD episode. And after um, after Stuart had kind of coaxed me back to life a little bit, he said, "You know what? We're going to pick up a cat tomorrow because I don't want you to be alone in the house all the time." And just having another heartbeat around helps. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, because it's life, right? It's life, and
Exactly.
it's the cuddles as well, right? It's like the connection, I think, and because they're so non-judgmental.
Exactly. And when you can kind of feel yourself getting sucked into that negative space, that kind of darker area, you can just stop whatever you're doing and just sit next to them, and they'll just sit there and cuddle into you, and that's that.
And actually, my dog will come up to me, like he
Oh,
knows
yes.
exactly.
My cat does that too.
He knows exactly when I'm not well, and he literally comes up to me, like snuggling up, and you know, like,
Exactly. They pick
you know,
up on it
yeah,
so
for sure.
quickly.
So
So
yes, like, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily obviously recommend anyone get a dog or anyone, you know, but like at the same time, if you have the facilities, if you have all that,
exactly. Well, that's the thing. Like I put off getting a cat for a long time as well because I always said like I want to be able to, if anything happens, to just be able to pay for a vet visit and for a long time that wasn't an option. It's not so
yeah,
much the food as the vet, I guess. That is the cost. But yeah, if you're in a position where you can, pets are hugely healing.
yeah,
And
and
it
even
doesn't have to be a dog. It could be a cat. That's a
well,
little bit easier,
but
or a
also
bird, or a rabbit.
there's services out there, right? And that was before I could get one, and before I could
Mm.
get a dog. I got a service that's called Borrow My Doggy, and you know, you connect with people in your area who need help with their animals because they're working and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
that's brilliant.
I looked after a dog for a long time, and you know, she just came to me, and we just hung out and went for
It's like
walks. You know,
timeshare dogs. That's so
yeah,
handy.
yeah, it's a very good kind of, you know, thing to do, because I couldn't have a dog for a long time, you know,
Mm.
because I didn't have the space and, you know, the time and stuff. So
Well,
um
and when we didn't have pets as well, sometimes I would just go to the petting zoo, just
yeah,
because hanging out with animals, I just find is so nice because, like you say, their energy is totally chilled out and so non-judgmental. And just standing and petting a sheep can just be really quite calming to the nerves.
totally. So, you know, that's kind of, and to be honest, that's kind of, you know, that's my go-to really to kind of, you know, self-care is like, well, I'm just going to drop everything now, and I don't, you know, I don't have to do anything right now, but be present with, you know, him, and just, you know,
Exactly.
play fetch or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. That's so cool. Well, on that note, let's uh, let's wind it up. I think the conclusion that we can draw from this conversation is that self-care is often in the small things, and that both of us are animal lovers.
For sure. Yeah. And
So,
don't trust any non-animal lovers, in all fairness. Like, sorry, but, you know, just don't.
right,
No, I'm just
Christine,
kidding.
thanks so much for joining me. And of course, when your podcast comes out, we'll make sure that we will share those details with our audience as well. And we look forward to hearing more about how you cope with some of the darker stuff or the darker days.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a fun thing to do, and you know, I do hope that I was able to kind of help with, you know, getting self-care out there.
I hope so too.
Thank you so much.